Greetings to you all. You are tuned into another webinar focused on HBCUs from the HBCU Educate webinar series sponsored by NASPA Region 3. I am your host, Dr. K, and we're going to give people about 1 or 2 more minutes to come on in the webinar before we get started. So please be patient with us. And once again, if you have comments, please post those in the chat. And if you have any questions, pose those in the Q&A function, and towards the end of today's webinar, we will have the opportunity to answer some of your questions. Feel free to invite some of your colleagues to come on in the room with you to learn. We are about 2 webinars away from completing our fall series. So I'm excited about this conversation today. And as you continue to wait, I just want to note that we do post the recordings of these live webinars on the NASPA Region 3 YouTube, so you can definitely replay this at another point in time. All right, so I don't want to waste any more time because I'm really excited about this conversation and this presenter. And so once again, my name is Dr. Kelly Dixon, also known as Dr. K, and I host the HBCU Educate webinar series sponsored by NASPA Region 3. And today's topic is the state of student affairs at HBCUs. And our guest presenter today is Dr. Adriel A. Hilton, who is the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management, as well as Associate Professor of Education at Southern University at New Orleans. We are so excited for you to be here, Dr. Hilton. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to the engaging conversation with each of you all, my colleagues, and to learning from you as well. So I'm going to just highlight some slides, run through them fairly quickly, and so we can have this rich conversation. And of course, I will not read the entire slides to you all, and I'll share the slides with you all. So as we know, how our field began and evolved, in the late 19th century, there was a dean of women or a dean of men who were in the res halls, dorms back then, but now residential communities, in reference to maintain discipline. And they served in a form as parents or in loco parentis, as we say in higher ed, for those students that reside in those residential communities. And that shifted in the mid 1900s in reference to the student personnel point of view that was written in 1937 and updated in 1949. That shift has continued in 1960s. Now it's more of the development of the whole student. And so now we're looking at more tangible items, more social catalytic spaces where students can engage and come together, instead of just looking at disciplining them, right, in terms of conduct. So in reference to some top issues facing student affairs professionals today, and student well-being comes to the top and continue to stay at the top at most institutions, HBCUs, PWIs, community colleges, and of course, hunger and homelessness, and then our race relations, especially on our PWI campuses, and substance abuse. So these are like the most facets of the areas where students face these issues. And as a student affairs practitioners and professionals in the field, these are some of the items that we will continue to deal with. So what student affairs professionals spend their most time on, from this Gallup poll through Inside Higher Ed, the majority of their time is spent, of course, on student mental health, as well as student well-being. And where public institutions like HBCUs were more likely to answer yes than privates in hunger and homeless, 73% public, 31% private. So of course, race relations, again, substance abuse, interpersonal violence, free expression on campus, as well as Greek life. So these are the top items in which most student affairs professionals spend their time on. So mental health issues in Black students. In 2021, racism and the coronavirus pandemic impacted Black students' mental health. At PWIs, Black students reported being racially profiled by campus police, getting derogatory treatment by staff, hearing use of the N-word, and being stereotyped. At HBCUs, Black students are less likely to have these racial problems. Next slide. So in Inside Higher Ed, Gallup survey results to the question, how are race relations on your campus? And how are race relations in higher ed, right? So these are some items we're dealing with in reference to race on campuses. And we see this playing out at a significant number of PWIs. So student affairs professionals said that race relations are essentially good. Of course, it's not excellent. Good at 48%, right? And college presidents say race relations on campus is good, 63%. It's not excellent. In reference to how are race relations in higher ed? Student affairs professionals say that they're fair, 67%, and most college presidents say it's fair, 66%. But our goal is to get it to excellent, right? So, in our conversation, we can speak to how race relations on our campus and within the field can become excellent, right? So what's the solution for a significant number of these items? Of course, higher ed administration and our professionals require greater awareness of the roles, showing empathy, of course, listening to our students, listening to our alumni, faculty, and staff, developing communications and leadership development for them, right? Technological advances, right? Colleges are investing more in teletherapy resources that may better meet the needs of students. Providing them with a counselor of the same race or ethnicity of them is essential to those students. Providing them with staffing. You hear a lot that a lot of staff or staff shortages, or we don't have the resources, right? So we want to have resources and different resources financially in terms of persons on campus, but we also want to have resources in terms of teletherapy resources for those students on your campuses. And strategic business partnerships, right? Partnering with persons outside of the institution and internal to the institution. For example, on my campus, the university has a grief counseling center that was just founded through a grant at the institution where they provide services through that grant to some parishes. And so that's an opportunity for us to partner with the Grief Counseling Center on our campus. So mental health issues, of course, are not the only problem for our team members. As I noted before, the most points that have noted through research and through different surveys are, students are dealing with hunger and homelessness, substance abuse, race relations, interpersonal violence. And we've been doing programming at SUNO for interpersonal violence and stuff to that nature. So there are a host of items that students are dealing with when they come to your campus or college or university. So the opportunity to engage them in these spaces in reference to providing support and resources for them is key. It will take a collaborative effort from all departments across campus to help ensure student success and retention is present, right? So from academics, admissions, recruitment, financial aid, diversity, equity, and inclusion offices, alumni relations, alumni affairs, which is the ultimate goal of the university, is to serve our students and to see them to graduation and matriculating out of the institution, right? Matriculate in and persist to graduation. So that's the goal. So this was a recent article, 2017, Student Affairs Trends to Watch in 2017-19, offers this advice specific to our team members in reference to our colleagues when dealing with complex student issues of today. Take time to just breathe, take care of yourself, invite your students to be a part of the conversation, planning and brainstorming with your students. So that's something that we do at SUNO. We always invite student leadership and students to be a part of the conversation, to serve on these task force, to serve on the search committee, stuff to that nature, right? Most recently, the chancellor and I broke bread with student leadership. We took them out. We wanted to hear their concerns. Each vice chancellor has their list of concerns that they're working through to improve and enhance the experience for our students. Network with your colleagues for fresh ideas, advice, and perhaps even a dose or two of therapy, right? So I have a list of colleagues that I can contact to ask for advice. What are they doing at their institutions? How are they doing these items? As well as I pour into them as they pour into me. And these are just references of where I received the information. And I'm gonna stop share, and I look forward to the robust conversation.
Awesome. So as turn my heat down. So as once again, for those that are attending, if you have questions, please use the Q&A function. And if you have comments, put them in the chat to in this conversation. And so based off of the data, and so as someone who does data for a living, so I noticed on one slide, it stated, I want to say one person from the institution completed the survey.
Yes, yes. Let me go back. You mind if I pull it up?
No, feel free.
Okay, let me just go back and share screen. So this is from, let's see. Is this the one? Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Including answers for only one person per institution. So when you think about data in this sense, how reliable is it? And I guess for me, you know, understanding what questions were asked to kind of answer that, and then also who is the person completing it.
Sure.
You know, what a student affairs professional may say is going to be totally different than what someone in academics may say.
Sure. And your question is on point. From my knowledge, from my lived experience, and of course, I did not contact the Gallup staff or the Inside Higher Ed staff, but from my knowledge, this was a chief student affairs officers that completed the survey with their institutional research folks based on what are the number of items that continue to come up in reference to students' needs at their institutions. And we're dealing with this on our campus. We're doing a counseling search now. We had a field search at the beginning. Now we're in our second round of our counseling search, trying to find someone to assist students with these items. But we went ahead and hired a resource manager to assist those students that needed resources in reference to like homelessness, or in reference to I just lost my employment, or stuff to that nature, to assist those students. And I know more institutions now are hiring those resource professionals,
right,
as well, to assist students.
Mm-hmm. And do you happen to know how many HBCUs were represented in this study?
I do not know. I know they were included though in this survey, so I can definitely get that information. But I do know that this was like the most recent data that I can find that spoke to what student affairs professionals are dealing with, and HBCUs were representative. But I can definitely get, and we can share out in the future, what were the HBCUs that participated, the number of them.
Yeah. And so when I look at it, thinking from a student affairs perspective, these topics, and more particularly using a HBCU as the framework, that's student mental health and well-being, and the combination of race relations, especially when you think about what's going on in society and how
Sure.
it impacts not only students, but the profession. So in your role as Vice Chancellor, can you speak to, from your staff perspective, what are you seeing, not seeing as it relates to society, what's going on, and what we see here as some of the top issues for professionals?
Sure, sure, excellent. So, in reference to mental health and well-being, that's real. Yesterday, I had a situation where a student was suicidal, and in my role as vice chancellor, that student was off campus, so I had to quickly pivot, go see if that student attended class, go see if that student was home, contact that student, get New Orleans Police Department their address, stuff to that nature, right? And then to follow up this morning, how that student was. So student mental health and student well-being are key at historically Black colleges, predominantly white institutions, and community colleges. Hunger and homelessness, I do, since I've started April 1st, I have been dealing with that at Southern University at New Orleans. A significant number of persons here in New Orleans are hospitality management and tourism. You know, that is the niche market here in that area, right? And since the pandemic, a number of them have not worked or have been laid off or have been reduced load in terms of hours, right? The market here is New Orleans is food, culture, environment. So with food, culture, environment comes hospitality management and tourism, and a number of those are students, and a number of those persons are Black and brown persons. So so we've been working to assist them in gaining entree to career opportunities, um, pay their balances. We pay 888 balances for students. We're working now on the stop out list. There's a list of 90 plus of 1,150. We're calling that list, texting that list, emailing that list to say, hey, here are resources to come back and complete your degree. And here's resources in reference to career opportunities for you. In reference to race relations, we have programmed around race relations in reference to speakers and stuff to that nature, in reference to speakers in reference to George Floyd and stuff to that nature. Black Lives Matter. We recently did a mayor summit where we had 2 Black female mayors, the mayor of New Orleans and Mayor President Brooms of Baton Rouge. So for our female students and Black and brown persons to see 2 female mayors talking about their lived experience of serving as elected officials, and the mayor of the city of New Orleans and the mayor of the city of Baton Rouge was rich. So we tied in women's history, stuff to that nature, to that Lyceum programming. So to answer your question, yes, substance abuse and interpersonal violence. We just did violence programming on campus. We had 3 different sessions through our resource manager. So we are capturing items in pop culture or media and bringing them to the table at our institution. Free expression on campus, we're working to advance and improve our student handbook. And we're working to embed some of that free expression on campus, gender identity and expression, stuff to that nature. In reference to Greek life, we just had training and development for Greek life individuals in August, and we'll continue that in reference to trying to get all the Divine Nine present. We just had Omega Psi Phi just did their Greek week. So we are working to what is hazing, what is not hazing, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. How do you develop a rich membership intake process, stuff to that nature. So that is taking place.
So, you know, I believe, yeah, so I believe that a lot of these topics, if not all of them, we've always experienced. However, the pandemic has heightened some of these, or brought, or different instances that are happening in society has heightened some of these topics. And so when you think about the lay student affairs professional, you know, your typical graduate student coming in or been working for quite a number of years. In HBCUs, we know that a lot of our professionals have been at the institution for 5, 10 plus 20 years, right? And so when we think about new practices, and I don't like to use best practices per se, but new practices at HBCUs, what, from your seat, what do student affairs professionals, both incoming, coming out of graduate school, or those that have been there, seasoned professionals, what are we needing to learn or develop to be able to address some of these issues or these topics that are pressing for our students?
Excellent question. So I don't term it best practices either. I term it promising practices. But I would say in reference to promising practices, we want to have programming and development centered around mental health, well-being, that as a Black and brown person, you can go and seek counseling, right? So I myself am in therapy every Tuesday evening with my therapist here. And I'm very always transparent and candid that I've been in therapy for the past 4 years. And so for me, it was getting to a point where I met a group of young Black professionals who were LPCs, licensed professional counselors, who were teaching in a counseling program, and all of them were in therapy. And they said, hey, in our field and in the field of student affairs and ed, we all should seek somebody to speak with, right? So I import that in my staff and the people that I interact with, as well as our students, right? So they see that I leave campus on Tuesdays at 5 to go to therapy at 6. So they understand that, hey, this is of vital importance, right? So definitely bringing in culture and environment, as well as leadership, to say that therapy is important for all faculty, staff, and students, as well as professionals. So in my past role as Dean of Students and Diversity Officer at Seton Hill University outside of Pittsburgh, we had therapy within our plan, and it was free, right? So it was touted that, hey, you all should do these things. We had there at my past employer, which was a predominantly white, Catholic, highly selective liberal arts institution, we did have there that we hired 3 full-time counselors. When I first arrived, it was 1.5. And so now there's 3 full-time counselors that are there full-time to do work for our students there at Seton Hill. So I'm going through the same thing now. I have 1 counselor. That counselor left to get an opportunity to make substantial more money, right? And so, we will never hold that person back. Go make your income. We truly understand. We do not want to see you leave, but we understand because this is our salary cap. So that individual departed us, and now we're searching for that individual. And leadership is on board to say, hey, what else do you need around counseling, mental health? So now we're working with our partners, New Orleans East Hospital, to say, hey, do you all have counseling services? Oshner, which is another hospital or medical facility, do they have counseling services? What can you all provide that we cannot provide? So leadership is at the table, and they know that mental health and well-being is of importance, right? They understand that most recently a significant number of institutions said, hey, we're gonna take a day off, but it's a day on to say, hey, take this time as grace for yourself, for your mental health. So we're on board with the leadership team, read that material, read what was happening at UNC Chapel Hill. We know a host of HBCUs did that as well. And so how can we embed that in our programming and initiatives? How can we add more mental health resources and counseling services to our institution? So I would say the leadership is at the table, and they understand in reference to those items. So we are doing that work. In reference to hunger and homelessness, this is a community where this occurs. As noted, that a significant number of them are in hospitality management and tourism, and this may occur and will continue to occur in this environment. So how do we wrap around those students and provide support? So we did hire a new director of career services. We did hire several of positions will be in that area. The career services is now housed through institutional advancement. We have been working with the vice chancellor of institutional advancement now to get deals where we have lunch cards, dinner cards, we have bus cards for students. All they have to do is come and ask, right, hey, I need a bus card for such and such, a lunch card for this venue, I need a dinner card for this venue. So we've been brokering those deals to get those items for those students. In reference to substance abuse, we've been doing that work, and especially through our grief counseling center as well. So I would say, what I would say to that historically Black college and that leadership team is to look at your peer institutions and see what they are doing, and look at your aspirant institutions you aspire to be like, to see what they are doing, as well as look at the demographic profile of your students to see what are the needs of them and survey them and to ask them uh, what is needed for them. As we just broke bread and sat down with our students and student leadership, we asked those questions. Um, yeah.
And so with the pandemic, some of us have been very fortunate to do our work from the comfort of our own home. Some were not as fortunate, i.e. housing staff more than likely had to stay on campus, and our, health center staff due to the nature of their work. But given that most student affairs professionals have been working from home, have the luxury of working from home per se, and with some institutions moving back to in person. From your seat as a vice chancellor, are you seeing or are you recognizing that there are some work based on your position that can be done from home, and honoring that request from staff that say, hey, now as a part of my well-being and mental health, I'll prefer to do my work from home rather than coming to an office every day or coming to an office 2 or 3 times a day?
We're dealing with that now. So Southern University system is the only Black system in the nation. I did not preference this. Usually now when I speak, I just arrived April 1st, I always preference that. So meaning Southern University system has 5 campuses. They have the Baton Rouge landmass, which is the Law Center, Southern University A&M College, which is the flagship, and they also have the Ag Science campus, right? So that's the Baton Rouge landmass. And then there's the Shreveport campus, which is the 2-year community college. And then there's the Southern University New Orleans campus, which has 2,268 students. So of that campus, Southern University system, so we all are 5 campuses under one system, Southern University system. And so this system sent out a communique that as of July 1, you will return to work, right? So July 1, 2021, you will be at your desk, you will be at work from 8 to 5, you will have on your mask, you will social distance, right? So all chancellors on a continual basis with the president of the system and who's also the chancellor of the Baton Rouge campus. So it's president-chancellor. And so, and I report to Dr. James Ammons, executive vice president-chancellor. He's executive vice president of the system, but chancellor of Southern University at New Orleans. So we were all informed to return to work on July 1. Some person said, hey, based on my mental health or based on my disability or based on such and such, I cannot return to work, right? So they went through HR, they went through them submitting for their accommodations, and those are HR decisions that, I was not privy to for those individuals. But we were informed to return to work July 1 for our system. So if those persons needed accommodations, they will work through HR to see if they could be accommodated, if their job function will allow them to be accommodated. So that's what we were.
So are you, do you think as we progress in higher ed and thinking about those individuals that will be coming into student affairs, that may be something that they bring to the table in the interview process? Is this a position where I can possibly work remote, if not full-time, at least 2 or 3 times out the week?
Myself, Adriel Hilton, not a part of Southern University system, is on board with that, right? But even, so I would say Southern University at New Orleans, when they left in March, they did not return till July. So March of 2020, when the pandemic hit, we departed campus. I was not privy because I was not present. I was in Pennsylvania, but they did not return to campus till July 1, right? So in my previous employer, we left in March 2020. We were on campus July 2020. And we had classes face to face August 2020.
Wow.
And we had classes face to face January 2021. And we had classes face to face summer 2021, right? So that did not take place here. And so I believe that's why the Southern University system is saying, okay, it was March 2020, now you return July 2021, we would like you all face to face. So if I was not tied to the system, I would say, yes, I'm on board with that individual working home, right? But from the system standpoint, they must report to work. And they must go through their accommodation process through HR. Yeah.
So beyond the survey results, are there any top issues facing student affairs professionals? Not necessarily our students at HBCUs, but being a student affairs professional at HBCU, what are some things that we should be thinking about or looking forward to in terms of development?
Sure, I would say this is my opinion. My opinion is that a lot of persons in student affairs are facing burnout. Mm-hmm. A lot of persons in student affairs are feel as though that also that their salaries may not demonstrate or show the amount of work they do, right? So they should be compensated more, right? I will also, you hear that a lot and you see that a lot. Hey, I've left the field. I've gone to another opportunity because they paid more. You also see that some institutions, HBCUs and PWIs, they may not value student affairs professionals, right? So what is your role? What are you doing? And how has your role impacted our institution? And how does your role, or how do you continue to impact our institution, right? So it's a matter of, do I matter on campus in my role in student affairs? Is student affairs doing work? You hear that often, right? Also, in reference to pay, morale in student affairs may be low at a host of institutions based on pay, as well as I would say, in reference to student affairs professionals, pay, morale, and I will always also have to say burnout in reference to their time to doing the work, right? A lot of these folks come in on the weekends, do their work, and a lot of them come in late evenings to do student programming or program during the day and program in the evenings. And what I say to those individuals, and what I continue to say, that, hey, what is your passion? What is your goal in life? What is your, if this institution is not a fit for you, there's 5,000 more by the Red Book. There's 5,000 colleges and universities, or it's like 4,800. So if this institution is not a fit, there's 4,800 more. So go ahead and select one you feel is a fit for you, your family, your partner, and your environment, where you feel as though that you will thrive and be your best self, right? And then I always preference is higher ed where you want to be, or do you want to do association work, working for NASPA full time? Do you want to do one DuPont Circle, or do you want to work for the state higher ed agency? So Pennsylvania System of Higher Ed, or do you want to do this work at the private agency, Pennsylvania Independent Colleges Association, or do you want to do this work at research think tanks like SHIHO and stuff in Boulder, Colorado, or stuff to that nature? Like, what is your purpose? What is your goal? What is your aspiration in doing this work? So those are some of the items, but you always hear those three: the burnout, the am I valued in my role, as well as you always hear the other topic that I discussed, that pay in reference to persons within student affairs speak of and and that are issues I feel top issues that we face.
Now, are there any issues that you would see more at a HBCU with student affairs professionals as opposed to other institutional types?
Sure, I would say definitely. I would say at HBCUs you have a significant number of team members, and they're 3 or 4 persons.
Mm-hmm.
They're one title, right? They're doing 3 or 4 different roles, right? And you see that a lot because a significant number of them are low resource, right? Meaning like they may not have the resources to hire 4 different individuals. So let's collate that into your role, right? So the goal is to do those roles and do them of quality and to make sure that the students are taken care of, right? So how can I do all those roles and to make sure that nothing, how can I do all those roles and do them to the top level that you desire of excellence at our HBCUs? So I see that often in the field and within roles. And so my goal is to try to say, hey, can we hire additional personnel, or can we take some of this off and spread this throughout the entire division? Can we develop some type of committee that does this, or a task force, and we spread the wealth throughout students, faculty, staff, through different divisions, and have shared governance on this item, stuff to that nature.
Gotcha. For our attendees that are participating, feel free to add your comments and questions in the chat in our Q&A function. So I have another question. Being that, this is hosted by NASFA Region 3, and Region 3 is where a majority of our HBCUs are located. My question is around, I know personally when I attend conferences, we'll just speak to NASFA, I don't see a lot of, I see a lot of HBCU alum, but I don't see a lot of HBCU student affairs professionals attending these conferences. And when I have conversations with my colleagues at HBCUs, the number one factor is normally my employer is not paying me to go. And I don't have the funds to pay for me to go myself. Can you speak to this idea of professional development and lack thereof in terms of attending these conferences, whether they're local, regional, or national, from HBCU student affairs professionals?
Sure. Excellent point made. So I'm going to speak from my lived experience attending HBCU and working at 2, right? And then I'm going to speak to my experience at the predominantly white schools, the highly selective white schools I've worked at, right? So when I arrived at Grambling State as chief of staff, I asked professionals what were their professional associations, and a significant number of them were not knowledgeable about their professional associations. We educated them, meaning the team, cabinet, and we provided support for them to travel to these opportunities. A number of them, some took advantage and some did not take advantage, right? Based on familial situations. Hey, I don't have childcare, or hey, my partner is such and such and such, and we could not hold down our family household, so I could not travel to that meeting, right? Okay, well, there are some opportunities for you, local, regional, state, stuff to that nature, right? And some of them did partake in that, right? I will also say that when I arrived to my PWI, it was, you will be attending. There is no question. You will be attending. This is a must. This is part of your scope. This is part of how you will be evaluated. We will pay for the trip, and it's expected that you attend. So there was a total difference. I think at the HBCUs where I work, it was like, this is an opportunity for development.
Right.
It was not expected for you to attend. So, I mean, and that comes from leadership, right? So Dr. Willie Larkin, past president of Grambling, was not going to say, you're demanded to attend this event. No, if you can attend if you desire. I also believe in reference to student affairs spaces that HBCUs are actively engaged and involved in NASAP, the National Association of Student Affairs Professionals, which was founded in the 1950s at Howard University when they did not feel that NASPA and ACPA were spaces for them, right? And that's the reason why American Association of Blacks in Higher Ed was founded. Again, because there was the American Association of Higher Education, AAHH or AAHE, which is now defunct, which is not any longer an organization that was in one DuPont circle. And African Americans did not feel welcome in that environment, so they founded AABHE. So I would say that a significant number of HBCU leaders may say, hey, I want to send our folks to NASAP, National Association of Student Affairs Professionals, to their annual meeting, to their student leadership summit. And they feel as though that's a place of refuge. That's a place where there are persons that look like them. That's a place where a significant number of them may have attended an HBCU since they're working there, right? But doesn't mean that all have attended. They know what HBCUs are capable of doing,
right,
and what they continue to do with our students, right? So you don't have to explain the narrative to them, right? Instead of flying to Los Angeles, California to a NASPA with 15, 20,000, 30,000 folks, what sessions do I attend? Are there HBCU convenings there? Is there a reception for HBCU folks? I would say, and I'm not knocking it, I'm not saying that they should not attend NASPA and ACPA, they definitely should attend, but I would say, what are their most comfortable, what venue are they feel as though they have agency, and that's the venue they will attend. So it also stems from what is the programming and taking place at NASPA, right? You know, so has NASPA Region 3 reached out to all of the HBCUs in the area, all their vice chancellors or their VPs or their dean of students, and say, hey, we would love to have you at the table. We would love to have your folks there. Let's get sessions each time around HBCUs. These are the amount of sessions we have for you all. I think it behooves you to attend, right? Or some type of partnership with SACSA, NASPA Region 3 and SACSA, to say, I know SACSA just met most recently in Norfolk, Virginia. That could have been a great opportunity to say NASPA Region 3 as well as SACSA is putting on this HBCU convening at the session, and these are the sessions. So to answer your question, I would say, yes, that does occur, right? We know that some HBCUs may not provide professional development support. In my current role at my current institution, we are providing support for them. We are allowing faculty, staff, and even our student is flying to DC to attend professional development opportunities. However, it all ties to the system of where you can travel, where you cannot travel based on COVID-19 precautions. So we're in high transmission venue, New Orleans, culture, environment, food, right? So where can we travel to not bring COVID, the Delta variant, back to our institution, to our students? But your point is well taken in reference to students and faculty and staff or HBCU environments where professional development may not have been at the table for them.
I think you made a good point of this concept of professional development being an opportunity versus an expectation, and that is heavy on the leadership and how they deem it. And so I do know, as the HBCU division chair for NASPA Region 3, a part of my goal is to get more student affairs professionals to become members of NASPA, participate in these opportunities. And so my biggest issue is we don't have a big, large number of institutional membership, right, from HBCUs. And to go to your point, I have contacted all, the VCs, chief student affairs leaders that have institutional membership. And to today, I've only had one to respond, right? And so that sent a clear message to me in some sort of whether they're too busy, they didn't see the email, or they just don't want to be involved, whatever the case may be. I too was at the SASCA conference in 2021, what was it, last weekend in Norfolk. And so once again, I probably saw one or two additional HBCUs there, in addition to A&T where I'm at. Definitely not a lot of representation. And even in talking to student affairs professionals at different HBCUs, whether it's private or public, to engage them in participating by submitting a program proposal. I'm always hit back with, I've never presented at that level. I don't know what to do. If I get it and then my school doesn't pay for it, it'll be a waste of time. Blase, blase. For me, it's always, you can't really say no to something you never put yourself in the hat for, right? And so even if you don't get accepted or accepted in your institution can't pay, at least you were part of this process and you can take that presentation and present it anyway at this point, because, you know, the feedback that is given to you. But for me, being in this position, it has truly been a sweet in terms of I have the conversations with colleagues. I work at HBCU, so I know the issues, but I also know the value of professional development on all levels, and the power of networking and social capital. And at HBCU, we live off of social capital. Unfortunately, the social capital is not always capital, if that makes sense. But thank you for that notion of what I really want to drive home is that professional development at HBCUs are sometimes seen as either an opportunity or an expectation, and that's dependent on the leadership and how they roll it out. So we do have a question. How do we support student affairs practitioners at HBCUs, especially as it relates to competitive salaries and professional development?
Yes, excellent, excellent. So when I would just talk from my lived experience and then say how an institution should be supporting that staff member, right? So when I arrived at Southern University at New Orleans, I arrived April 1st. I transitioned here to New Orleans in June. I have worked at an HBCU in the past. I am a product of three. So I did ask, I indicated to the team that these are your professional associations based on your area of your scope of work, right? And I indicated to them that, hey, you should be attending these meetings, right? So Title IX is a TICSA. Were you at a TICSA? Did you learn the new regs? Adriel Hilton would not know all these regs when I'm calling to a meeting, right? So I'm asking you, what are the new regs for Title IX, right? So Title IX attended a TICSA. We received the university membership. They were present, right? Same thing. So Title IX has a dotted line to me. So I asked, hey, were they attending? Did they attend? Or were a member? And I did the same thing with my other professionals on campus. In terms of housing, in terms of res life, stuff to that nature. So a significant number of them were not members. A significant number of them did not attend in the past. A number of them have yet to present at conferences or symposia. And they're actually very skilled. They're skilled, they're quality folks, they do good work, but they did not have entree to those opportunities in the past, right? So I said, hey, I send them conferences where we report out in our divisional meetings. These are the meetings that are coming up. Hey, these are the proposals that you all should submit. Hey, these are opportunities for you, right? So I am having that conversation with my team. Same thing we did at Grambling under Dr. Willie Larkin's leadership as well, the past president. We did that same thing. What I met with is, I would say they have not done it in the past, and they were not encouraged to do it in the past. In the past, it was, I would say, from my opinion, from my lived experience, this is not on behalf of Southern University system, but in my past, in my experience thus far, I would say that it was more of top-down approach where you should attend, right? It was not shared governance. It was not a collaborative approach. So now that it's more shared governance, everyone's at the table, collaborative approach, we must collaborate to get this work done, to increase enrollment, to retain our students. Now it's more, I would want to attend, right? because it's not a force that they must attend. So those conversations are taking place. But for that individual and for that person that feels as though their growth is being stymied or stifled at their current employer, right? If it is an HBCU and you feel as though that you are not receiving the professional development needed, or that your growth is being, you're not growing in your role, that's where you may want to contact your mentor external to the institution and say, hey, I need to search for another institution, right? Remember that there's 4,800 colleges and universities. So if you're not happy where you are, there's 4,800 that will welcome you. And then you may need to decide, hey, do I want to stay in HBCU spaces, right? Every HBCU is not the same. That's another item, right? You have private, you have highly selective, you have liberal arts, you have community colleges, right? And every predominantly white institution is not the same, and every Hispanic serving, right? So you may want to say, hey, I want to try another HBCU, or I want to look for another institution to do this good work and to grow at, and to grow and further and develop. But I would say if you are not being fed at your role, at your current employer, you need to go where they can feed you.
And what
Did I answer that person?
I'll wait for our attending to say if you have or have, but what I heard from that is that we need to be intentional about fit when it comes to institutions. And so it's one thing to say, I want to work in an HBCU, but what does that really mean for you personally and professionally, you know? And going back to your notion of every HBCU is different. You have private, public, 2-year, 4-year, liberal arts, engineering, agricultural. You have HBCUs in the South versus HBCUs up North. It's just different. And so being aware of yourself is important to maintain your sustainability of being a professional, a student affairs professional at the HBCU. So thank you for that. I will throw in a plug that NASPA Region 3 will be hosting the Summer Symposium in Charleston, South Carolina, June the 11th through the 14th. And I'm happy to announce that I am chairing and directing that Summer Symposium. So information regarding volunteering and also submitting program proposals will be coming out soon. So I'm really excited about that opportunity, and hopefully able to get more HBCUs involved in the Summer Symposium in Charleston, South Carolina. So with about 7 minutes, I want to ask our attendees if they have any more questions or comments to provide to our guests. And while we await that, Dr. Hilton, is there any lingering information or strategies or tips or words of encouragement that you want to give student affairs professionals that currently work at HBCUs, those that want to work at HBCUs?
Sure, I would say that this is challenging work. My the calls start at 7:30 and go to 11 p.m. So I do want to say that this is challenging work. I do want to say that it's selfless work, right? So it's not about Adriel Hilton, it's impacting the students that I daily impact. The Bree Nelsons, and I always use this, when I arrived, Bree was Miss Tuno when I arrived here. Bree is now a first-year law student at Howard. It's about the Jonathan Nelsons, who was SGA president when I was chief of staff at Grambling, who's now working at Texas A&M. The 62nd, as I call her, Joya Smith, who was Miss Grambling when I was there, who's now doing consulting work nationwide, who lives in Atlanta. Every time I'm in the A, we get up, we talk. I continue those relationships with those student leaders and a host of other students, right? So it's about pouring into the students. And I always say it's not about me, it's about the students. And then I would say, don't get caught up in the street committee and the naysayers, right? Go do your job, go home, right? So I've attended these institutions, so I know what these storied institutions in reference to the street committee, the gossip trail, and know that that is not your role, or that is not, you can't be cognizant of what they're saying. You must just do good work, right? And know that it will be challenging, but the work is fruitful when you see what happens on graduation day when all these students walk across the stage. And so that's what it's about. And also take self-care. So have your days that you do not log on in the evenings and on the weekends, and have your community outside of the university community. That's one thing that has pushed home for me, is that you must have community outside of your work environment.
Right.
So I have built community here in New Orleans of others that work outside of higher education, right? So I do turn up on Sundays and go to the day parties and stuff to that nature, right? So I recommend that, having that social aspect. And then, of course, your counseling, your therapy. For those that seek it, I'm in there every Tuesday evening. I'll be in session this evening with my therapist. And, you know, that is like a great form of, I would say, care for me. And so get that care that's needed for you to survive and thrive. And know that a better day is coming, in reference to if you're not in an environment where you're thriving and you feel as though you want to get to another environment, use your network. You know, use your network of folks from your leadership development programs. If it's Health, Higher Education Leadership Foundation, if it's, I also did AABHE, American Association of Blacks in Higher Ed, Leadership and Mentoring Institute. And I did a host of professional development opportunities. And if anyone offline wants to say, hey, Adriel, what are those opportunities? I'll copy and paste them into an email and send them to you. But also get your network up. You know, so I know if James Ammons today, when I arrive at work, say, Adriel, you're no longer employed here, I know I'm okay. Because I know I can call my list of mentors, elders, scholars, people worldwide and say, hey, I need a job or consulting opportunity, and I'll have one quickly, right?
Right.
So get your network up, you know, because you can't always bank on your current employer for opportunities, especially those that are working in environments that are at will. And, you know, so at where I currently am, if I was to fire an employee today, I must give that person 30 days. So we'll say your employment is no longer needed at Southern University at New Orleans, and I've had to do this twice so far, and I have one coming up on December 1st. Your employment is no longer needed. Here's your 30-day notice. We thank you so much for all you've done. They get paid for 30 days, and then they get paid for their vacation, right? So they'll probably get 2 more checks, right? I always say this when I preference to my mentees, myself, and my colleagues, stack your money. Put your money aside, put your money up, because you don't know when you're there today and you're gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then I would say this last thing: continue to publish, conduct your research, and continue to teach. So I serve as an adjunct at 2 institutions. I continue to teach my classes, and I can continue to consult as well. So, and I'll put my information in the chat if anyone wants to hit me up. You're more than welcome.
All right, and we're going to close with this final question. How do we do better? How do we do better at garnering the interest of professionals to work at HBCUs that are not alums, and they are not treated differently because they are not a product of the institution? And that's a great question as someone who is not a product of an HBCU. However, I believe that I can possibly say that I'm one of the biggest advocates for HBCUs. So when you think about professionals that are not necessarily alums or products of HBCUs, but how do we garner them to become professionals at our institutions of HBCUs?
So I struggle with that, and that's just me personally, right? Adriel Hilton, because I'm a product of 3, right? Mm-hmm. And I did my predominantly white second master's to say that I have this in my script out, right? So me personally, I struggle with that, because what I have found is that persons that are not products of our institutions are saying, I want to come and save those storied institutions, right? Or I need to be there to save the institution because they're doing all these things wrong, or they do not know promising practices, or they do not have the right persons at the table, stuff to that nature, right? So I would say come into that organization humble. As I came into Southern University at New Orleans, like I speak to maintenance on up to the chancellor. I speak to everyone on campus. I'm very humble. I never raised my voice, although folks have raised their voice to me, right? So I would say that stay humble, be intentional in your work, do quality work for the students, right? It's not about getting a pat on the back or the chancellor saying job well done, or it's about serving the students. I will also say, let them know that, hey, I'm not a product, but I've researched these institutions. I want to be here. I want to do this work. And that's why I'm present. It's not about me, it's about the students. It's about the student experience. It's about making sure the institution will be here for our nieces and nephews to come behind us, right? Or our sons and daughters. And also, I would say, when they see that you're doing quality work, when they see that you are humble and that you are there for the students, I believe, my opinion from my lived experience at Grambling and now at Southern University of New Orleans, that they would say that that individual is a good, like Adriel is a good person. He's here for the students. It's not about him. For instance, like we have a host of white faculty at SUNO, right? It's New Orleans. It's culture, environment, food. Why would white, black, orange, or purple not want to live in New Orleans, right? So we have a host of white persons. They don't know, a significant number of them that I have met. They did not know about the rich history of historically black colleges. They were not knowledgeable. They saw a job ad in New Orleans. They saw Southern University of New Orleans. They applied, and they had that opportunity, right? And these are non-black individuals working at HBCUs, and they're not products, and they're having a great experience. They're mentoring our students. They're doing quality work in the sciences and English and stuff to that nature, right? Same thing goes for those individuals that are African-American that may not have attended HBCUs. You know, you're needed on these campuses as well. And you're needed as you see it as, some may say you're an outsider. I would say you're not an outsider, right? You're someone that you see it from your vantage point of you did not attend these storied institutions. However, you want to work at one and advance it. So you speak to that in your daily walk on campus and when you interact with students and when you interact with faculty and staff. And those naysayers, as I said, in the street committee that says that you're not an HBCU alum, you should not be present, that's an opportunity to educate them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom. It has been a pleasure having this conversation with you. Thank you to all the attendees that joined us. And for those that are replaying this at a later time, thank you for listening. And so once again, Dr. Hilton, thank you so very much. You're very appreciative. And that was the state of student affairs at HBCUs. And so we'll see you. The next webinar will be December 8th. So be sure that you register today. Have a great evening.